What I eat in a day as a fat girl who barely eats anything. For breakfast, I had half of this smoothie. We had a sandwich. For lunch, I had some mixed greens with this plate. I had some strawberries and then some of these imitation crab sticks. Then for dinner, I had a grilled cheese burrito from Taco Bell, a little trail mix, and a sugar-free Russell Stover's Pecan Delight.
If that was barely anything, then how much did she eat before? A lot of personal trainers have been counting her calories, and I see them saying anywhere from 2,600 to 3,500. And that makes sense because this video was released at least 6 months ago, and she looks like she's gained weight when you look at her more recent content. But to be honest, I'm actually kind of bored of this type of conversation because calories in versus calories out is not the real problem here. The fat acceptance movement is dead, thankfully, so we don't have to debunk a bunch of activists gaslighting people anymore, which means that we can now actually address the core issues that are causing people to end up this overweight. Yes, calorie counts matter, and so does education on how weight loss works. But for the most part, unless you solve the underlying psychological problems, telling someone who is obese to just stop eating so much is like telling an alcoholic to just stop drinking. And to talk more about this, allow me to introduce you to a longtime YouTuber who goes by TomSka, who has kindly cataloged his difficulties with weight loss over the years.
I've struggled with my weight since I was about 9 years old, and if you've followed me on here for a while, you'll have probably noticed that struggle. In fact, I find it so hard to deal with that I've actually been wearing a girdle in some of my more recent videos, just to avoid people talking about my weight. I finally made the push to get fit and work with a personal trainer. I found that it's important to be happy with yourself and accept your flaws, but that doesn't necessarily mean ignoring them.
I liked his argument at the end, but mistake number one here was addressing your haters and telling them exactly how to hurt you. But I guess that can be forgiven because I don't exactly know when all these videos are from because they're archived from like 2012 or 2013. So people weren't all that well versed in how stupid it is to give attention to people who don't like you. Now that we've seen that, we're going to do a time skip of maybe a year or two and see how his diet and personal training regimen worked out.
My name is TomSka Ridgewell, and this might come as a surprise to you, but I am fat. I am a fat man. Here's the situation. Weighing in at a total of 252 pounds or 114 kilograms, it's safe to say that I have punched through the ceiling or fallen through the floorboards of fat and entered the realm of obesity.
I guess it didn't work because it looks like he's actually gained about 50 pounds. He wasn't nearly that heavy in the first video.
I reckon I need to lose around 80 pounds. I'll see you next week and wish me luck. TomSka out.
I mean, that's quite a lot of weight, and it will likely take more than a year to cut all of it. I really think when people are making any sort of change that takes a long time, that they should do cardio like running or walking for an uncomfortably long amount of time. This is not to lose weight, it's to teach you how to do marathon-level tasks, and I think endurance exercise is probably the number one thing that will teach you how to maintain discipline over time.
Here are some good mental tricks to use to help you run longer. Trick number one is to mentally break down your run into sections. Do not start your run thinking about the end amount of miles you gotta get done. It will overwhelm you. Don't think about the total amount of miles, just hit your checkpoints.
Right, focusing on how far you've come versus how much you have left will make you far more likely to succeed. The more negative thoughts you have, the more likely you will quit long before you actually run out of stamina. Anyway, TomSka has an update after a week.
Hey you, my name is TomSka Ridgewell, and despite dieting for a whole week, I am still a fat man. I've started this series to bring you along with me on my epic weight loss journey, so to spoil all the fun, why don't I talk about how I plan on getting from point A to point B? For the first few weeks, I'll be cutting everything out of my diet that isn't meat, fruit, or vegetables, so that means no bread, no potatoes, no pasta, and of course, no delicious junk food. I also intend on drinking nothing but water, flavored water, and sparkling water.
Yeah, none of that shit matters. Stuff like this isn't going to help him.
My shortcomings this week were that I didn't drink nearly enough water. I want to be getting at least 2 liters a day, and instead I've been drinking wine.
I thought him saying that he was drinking wine instead of water was a joke, but it turns out that he's actually an alcoholic, and that's talked about in other clips, so he was probably serious about that. Usually when people are addicts, they are addicted to multiple things, not just what they're currently complaining about. A lot of times one addiction will activate the others, so hearing all of that, those of you who have watched this channel for a while won't see this next clip as a surprise, which I'm guessing comes a year or two after the last one.
My name is TomSka Ridgewell, and oops, I did it again.
So we're on the third public attempt. This may be a shock to him, but it's not a shock to me because he hasn't really shown that he fully understands the problem. Because if he did, he wouldn't continuously get caught up in this cycle. The good news is, though, that because a lot of people do get caught up in these addictive cycles, there's a lot of incredibly specific information on how to escape them. The bad news is that there are a ton of people out there who also have incredibly specific information on how to exploit those who are vulnerable. Now, I've talked about this before on my channel, but I haven't talked about just how scientific they are on the psychology of trapping and exploiting addicts. Probably the most honest example I've seen of this comes from a mobile game producer.
I'm here to talk about monetization, the tricks on how to monetize a game well. Some of you will probably be slightly shocked by all the tricks I have listed here, but I'll leave the morality of it out of the talk. We can discuss it if we have time later.
Well, you always know you're going to hear some messed up shit when someone does an intro like that. Now, as this speech is going on, keep in mind that this occurred 9 years ago, so this information has been well known for a long time.
I've seen suggestions to model what you sell according to Bartle types. The achievers want to progress in the game, the socializers want to speak to other people, the killers just want to compete and kill each other, and the explorers are the guys who are after stories and experiences. You sell convenience to the achievers, which really means faster progress. Customization to socializers, hats and stuff. Competitive advantage, that is pay to win for the killers. And content for explorers. Now, the reason I highlighted convenience up there or progress is that most of your sales will be here. Customization, hats and stuff, they're nice, but you'll have a single-digit percentage of your income coming from that, if you do both that and progress. Competitive advantage is good, but you can go overboard with it and have an unbalanced game. And content, it takes a lot of resources and time to do that. Selling content is very expensive. Hardly any team can keep up producing content at the pace needed.
So they know your personality archetype and how profitable you are based on that. I was surprised to hear that cosmetic items were so low on the list of priority, but I was not surprised that leveling faster is the most profitable, because if you play these types of games, it is incredibly apparent that they make your leveling crazy slow unless you pay. So they just waste your time to the point where you'll start calculating your hourly wage versus how long it takes to level in the game. And they can get super predatory with these types of traps.
Loss aversion. This is, people are much more attached to the stuff they have than an equal amount of things that they can gain. In games, you can apply this by giving people stuff that is in their pocket and then threaten to take it away unless they pay up. This is, lots of level-based games do this. There are collectibles in things like Puzzle and Dragons. You collect along the way. If you didn't finish the level, they'll take it from you. Now, pay to continue a bit.
It's funny because I bet a lot of the players are thankful that the company gave them the opportunity to pay so they wouldn't lose their stuff, but the reality is that the game is specifically designed to prey on that psychology along with like 20 other tricks that they use to get you to give them money.
Social proof. We are herd animals, we tend to do what all the others do. This means that the socially accepted way of behaving in your game should be paying. For instance, when a clan member of theirs spend IAP money, you want the whole clan to know, because then that becomes the socially acceptable way of behaving. You absolutely do not want to tell them that the majority of people in your game never spend money. That's poison.
Every part of the design of the game is to get you to pay. This is why mobile games are incredibly profitable, and why you can see people spending into the tens of thousands of dollars on a mediocre free game. It's because they're addicted. That's the psychology of addiction, and there's a reason why addicts are almost always broke and reliant on the finances of others. The only answer is to avoid all products that are trying to prey on you like this. So if it came to dieting, then you would want to avoid ultra-processed foods like Oreos that have a predatory design just like mobile games do. Which brings us back to another TomSka update after some undisclosed period of time, and you guessed it, he's still fat.
At the start of 2015, with a newfound burst of enthusiasm / fear of death, I started a series called Fat Loser to document my weight loss. I was really gonna do it this time. No, I wasn't. Over the next couple months, I received so much bad news that I didn't know what to do with myself, and I just ran straight back into the arms of my two most loving and reliable companions.
Attempt number 4. As you can see, calories in versus calories out has nothing to do with this. He's using food as a coping mechanism for his problems, and until he addresses that, he will continue to struggle with his weight.
By October, I was 260 pounds and completely desperate. I saw an advert for a weight loss program and just thought, why not? I am gonna die if I don't do this. And 2 days into the program, they kicked me off because my liver was so damaged from the drinking that I was too much of a health risk for them to take responsibility for. By January 2016, I weighed 270 pounds, but I had managed to get my liver a little healthier and was allowed back onto the weight loss program. And now that I have lost enough weight to get myself back to where I was at the start of Fat Loser last time, I figured it was time to maybe start documenting this again.
So here's the part where he's showing he's an alcoholic because of his liver problems. I would guess that alcohol is his trigger to overeat because when you're drunk, it lowers your inhibitions. So it's pretty easy to drink a couple of beers and then down 2 large pizzas without fully remembering what you ate. However, his liver recovering suggests that he stopped drinking, so he may have figured out his mental issues.
But that doesn't mean I can stop trying, because if there's one thing I've said in my life that made sense, it's that failure isn't fucking up, it's giving up. So I've got to keep trying, and I don't know if it'll amount to anything, but wish me luck.
Actually, in addiction treatment, they say that relapse is a part of recovery. If you want recovery to succeed, then you go in with the idea that you will likely screw up, but you want to keep the screw up as minor as possible, and you don't want to allow a one-day mistake to turn into 1 month of mistakes or 1 year of mistakes. With that said, let's go to the final update.
Hey you, so I didn't want to make another weight loss vlog until I'd actually lost some serious weight, and in case you can't tell, I have now done just that. I'm still a way off from where I want to be, but things are going well, so I thought I would check back in and let you know how I'm doing and how I'm feeling and how I'm looking. Whatever, let's get into it. So the first thing worth celebrating is that I'm now past the halfway point of this diet. So far I have lost around 5 stone or 70 pounds or 30 kilograms.
This is great. I don't know how long it's been, but he said he's lost 70 pounds. That's not an easy amount to lose, and healthy weight loss is around 1 to 2 pounds a week, so he's been sober for months. Actually, on the topic of being sober, I think people have trouble calling overeating an addiction because they don't understand what sobriety means. And that makes sense because you have to eat to survive, which means you can't just not eat and say you're sober because of abstinence like you would with alcohol. So when it comes to food addiction, I would say that using is a couple of things. I would say that using is consuming ultra-processed foods that are scientifically and chemically designed to be addictive. This would be stuff like fast food, such as Taco Bell or McDonald's, or candy with high fructose corn syrup, or stuff that's in packages in the middle of the grocery store aisle. More specifically, if it's one of the middle-of-the-aisle foods that have multiple different types of sugar added to it when the food itself does not require sugar, then you should not be eating it. If you eat any of that stuff, then it's like an alcoholic drinking a beer, and it will gateway you into the next part of food addiction, which is eating a massive amount of calories a day, or binging. The addiction is not the food. The addiction is eating like 6,000 calories in a 24-hour period. I would say that if you regularly eat in excess of 500 to 1,000 calories of your daily maintenance, then that's using. I say 500 calories is sort of a grace window because if you're lifting weights, then you want to eat about 300 to 500 calories over maintenance to gain muscle during your bulking period. Anyway, Tom has had some success with his diet, so let's see what he did.
I'm just on a very strict, medically supervised, supplement-heavy diet, which provides me with basically just the things I need to survive, and I've only cheated on it like a few times, I promise. I don't really want to talk about the specific program I'm on until I can confirm that it works in the long run.
That doesn't sound like sobriety. That sounds like a very popular British shake diet, where you eat around 800 calories a day that I showed in a video that I made a while back, where a large amount of the participants gained the weight back after around a year and a half. So now I don't think he's broken away from his addiction cycle. I think he's still in it.
I'm not really good at moderation or self-control. I'm either eating everything or eating nothing, and I just really needed some help.
Yeah, that's very common with addicts, which is why I don't think he'll solve this problem until maybe he goes to a program like Alcoholics Anonymous to work on his drinking problem, and then he can take what he learns from that and apply it to his problems with food. To expand on what I said about food addiction and sobriety, what he actually needs to practice is not weight loss. He needs to stop trying to lose weight and instead get used to not overeating. If he can't figure out how to eat maintenance calories for an extended period of time, then anytime he finishes his weight loss cycle, he's just going to binge back to where he was. And because addiction is a progressive disease, when he bounces back, he'll bounce back worse than before. I would say that sobriety for a food addict like Tom is staying within 300 to 500 calories above or below maintenance. And I cannot stress enough that if you have the disease, you will not figure it out yourself. You need to get treatment and learn the different techniques that we have learned over the years to keep you sober. Exploiting addicts is huge money, so understand that there are tons of things to get addicted to, and everything is trying to prey on you for money. It's not just alcohol or cigarettes or processed foods. Preying on addicts is so deeply rooted in so many corporate strategies that random shit like Duolingo is trying to use manipulation techniques to get you addicted. Well, they have to, because Duolingo will never make you fluent in a language or even get you past beginner level.
I think Duolingo is just good at making you think that you're learning a language. You're getting things right, you're turning the units purple, you're winning the game. And Duolingo's marketing has made us think that winning that game is to learn a language.
Right, it's very obvious that they're using the mobile game strategy to hack your psychology, followed by more recently paywalling everything by doing what that guy from earlier said was the most lucrative model, which is requiring you to pay to progress faster in the game. You can also pay Duolingo to not lose your streak, so again, these strategies are very prominent.
But I also did all the Duolingo. There wasn't a word or phrase in the Swedish Duolingo tree that I didn't know still after that long. If I tried to watch a Swedish series with just Swedish subtitles, I had no idea what was going on. I would go to Swedish parties and gatherings in Sydney, and I could hold a conversation, but as soon as they spoke to each other rather than to me, nothing.
Anyone who is actually half decent at a language can tell you that apps like Duolingo are complete garbage. By half decent, I mean the European language scale B1 level describes your ability. So basically we're talking about the start of intermediate level. But the problem here is that Duolingo is so good at getting people addicted to the app that even though it doesn't work, they can't quit.
I'm going to reject that Duolingo is helping us all to learn languages, and I'm going to reject that it can't hurt, because not only is it not very effective, but it's good at convincing people that it is effective and getting them hooked on it. As I looked through more of the comments on Evan's video about it, I realized that lots of people were exhibiting behavior that suggested almost like an addiction, or at least an unhealthy relationship with this app that they don't even like. The video has over 2,600 comments, and I didn't find a single one that was in support of the change. But I also only found one comment that suggested that the person was actually done with Duolingo. And I think it's because, honestly, these people don't know where else they can go.
So the guy says that he thinks people won't leave Duolingo because they don't know what else to do. Well, first, you can just look up language learning strategies on YouTube. There are tons of videos that are good. Actually, I'll give you a little help because people won't stop asking me how to learn Japanese. I would say that I'm B2 moving towards C1 at Japanese, which is like intermediate pushing towards advanced. All of my study techniques are on screen. Most of these can be applied to other languages. Basically, if you want to actually get good at a language, then you need to go Dark Souls mode, throw yourself into an environment where you don't understand that much, and then try to succeed anyway. You can't just learn a language by using an app for 15 minutes a day. That's a joke. I can't believe Duolingo calls you a serious learner for doing just 15 minutes. I don't even think that would get you past the ability to greet someone in Japanese if you practice for 2 years. But the reason I'm talking about all this is because it kind of seems like people like TomSka who got addicted to food and alcohol, or even people who get addicted to Duolingo, are kind of experiencing the same process where they can't stop because they don't know any better. But the reality is that there are effective ways of solving their problems if they just had the right information. However, the issue is that they are so allergic to learning new things that they just repeat the same cycle over and over, and it makes them completely miserable.
I'm all for body positivity, but the fact remains that I just don't enjoy being overweight. I don't like how I look, and so I don't go outside. I don't see the world. I don't want to be in photos or in videos or make memories because I don't want to remember this. And I'm just tired of stopping myself from living. And also I want to wear nice suits.
Yeah, so his problem is so bad that he doesn't want people seeing him because he knows they will judge his addiction. And I think a part of addiction recovery is that you really need to write out all the ways that your addiction is causing you harm. Don't just leave them up in the air. Actually define them, because the process of recovery is to stack up like 10 different motivators at the same time to push you in the direction of sobriety. Having a well-developed understanding of how something hurts you is a strong motivator. And also understand that as fun as it is to engage with a vice, if you engage with it too much, eventually it's going to turn into a prison. And that's something that is reported by numerous addicts who are trying to recover. Here's an example of that.
What felt the most impossible was actually ever stopping.
Right.
And I think that's what scares so many gamblers and people that I talk to is like, how can I ever, like, how is this ever going to stop? And I'm like, bro, I lived like that for 12 years. I could never stop gambling. And it was all day.
Yeah.
It was all day. From the moment my eyes woke up, I checked sports, I checked lines, I checked everything to the moment I went to bed. And incessant over and over again. And I like tell people, I'm like, I lived in prison.
All right, so that was the end of TomSka's weight loss journey archive. I really don't know exactly how many years ago this was, but one of the videos he said was from 2015, so I can imagine that it's around maybe 10 years. That means some time has passed, so we can just check on his channel and take a look at how he's doing.
I'm gonna grab a beer. You want one?
Nah, I'm good.
Oh, by the way, don't press that button.
Wow, okay, so he really messed up. It's sad to see that after all these years, he didn't figure out the answer to his addiction.
Failure isn't fucking up, it's giving up.
I guess he gave up. It's kind of sad to see because the reason he's failing is not because he lacks discipline or willpower. He lost 70 pounds, and even if he lost it at an incredibly unhealthy pace, like 4 pounds a week, we're still talking about him maintaining a diet for over 4 months. That's not someone who doesn't have discipline, that's someone who doesn't have the right information, and someone who's missing the proper coping strategies, which you can learn provided that you get treatment, expose yourself to new information, and implement the new things you learn as quickly as possible. Though it doesn't matter how long you've been struggling with addiction, tons of people struggle for decades and are still able to make it into recovery.
I'm an addict in recovery. I'm sober 3 years this month in January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it took me 10 years to get 1 year sober. I'm also a compulsive gambler. I just hit a year in Gamblers Anonymous. Took me 10 plus years to get a year in that program as well.
That guy's name is Lewis, and after listening to his story on the We're All Insane podcast, I have to say that he was a pretty severe addict who was addicted to alcohol, hard drugs, and his worst addiction was gambling. It was a little unclear, but he's been sober from alcohol and pills for 3 years, and sober from gambling, his true addiction, for a little over a year. And a part of him surviving for that year is understanding what his triggers were.
I'm so certain that I'm powerless over that first bet. And I'm so certain that I'm powerless. If I take a sip of alcohol right now, there is a very high chance I'm on a plane to Cartagena, Colombia within the next 12 hours to burn my life down. That's how severe of an addict I am. My disease is never cured. I can arrest it. I can keep it arrested. But as an addict, my disease is never, ever cured.
Many addicts will realize that one addiction will trigger your more severe addictions. So like with TomSka, his severe addiction was food, and that would likely be triggered by his addiction to alcohol that he was using as a coping mechanism for the bad things that were going on in his life. And the more you listen to addicts, the more you'll realize that all these people have the same story in one way or another.
I used to live in the 9s and the 10s or the 0s and the 1s. And like now, like I've had to like reset my brain and emotional system to like, there's going to be like, when I get married in March, that's going to be a 9 or a 10 and that's going to be amazing. And then it's going to go back to being in the 4, 5, and 6s.
Yeah.
And that's also okay. Like that's actually good for somebody like
Balance.
me.
Does that sound familiar? TomSka said that he's either eating everything or eating nothing. He's either seeking a 10 out of 10 day where he eats as much pizza and ice cream as he wants, or he's experiencing a 1 out of 10 day by being on some crash diet. This is the story of every addict because they love living in the extremes, and a part of recovery is teaching them how to live with normal amounts of stimulation.
The drugs, alcohol, and gambling weren't my problem after a certain point. It was the solution to my problem.
Right.
My problem is my way of thinking.
That's really all it is. If you're trying to use every inch of your willpower to solve a problem, then you're doing it wrong. It should actually take very little discipline to manage an addiction because if you're managing it properly, then you will have a whole set of strategies that will keep you from using, and you learn those by getting treatments. Now, just for a point of nuance, I do want to say that everyone does things that are bad for them. The difference between someone who is healthy and someone who is an addict is that addicts take things to the extremes get more extreme as time goes on, and they cannot stop despite negative consequences, which is why they need treatments. Though understandably, going to find a therapist or going to something like a 12-step meeting can seem a little intimidating, so I will say that if you have a problem and you aren't comfortable with seeking out help yet, then watching the We're All Insane podcast, especially the ones that feature addicts in recovery, can be a good sort of pre-treatment to getting help in the future. When you hear your story through other people over and over, it can be quite motivating. Outside of this, understand that solving these kinds of problems is a test of endurance, which is why I recommended long-distance walking for people who are really overweight and long-distance running for those who are healthier, because it teaches you a mental lesson. If you want to succeed at running long distances, the worst thing that you can do is focus on the end goal. If you're a beginner and your goal is to run 1 mile, then focusing on the entire mile is the most likely thing that will get you to quit early. If you want to succeed, a good mindset is, I'm just going to run 1/10 of a mile. Then, when you make it there, you say, just 1 more tenth. Eventually, you'll hit 7/10 and you'll be really tired, but I mean, you're almost done with the full mile, so you might as well finish. And that same mentality applies to sobriety. You're not trying to get a full year sober or make it a year without engaging in your vices. You're just trying to get to the next day. Maybe you don't know if you can make it a year, but certainly you can make it just one more day. You do that 360 or so times, and then you have a full year. And the more days you make it, the more resistance you'll have to giving up because you don't want to break your streak. On top of that, the longer you make it, the more you'll also start to forget what it feels like to use, which will make it even easier to stay sober. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.